Hey everybody, and welcome to Cost Control. I guess this is how we'll be doing things from now on. I'll be online. Let me give you a little overview of how it's going to work. Each week, I will post a module which will have a narrated PowerPoint like this. There may be some videos in there, whatever way of presenting the material I think will be best to get the idea across. There will be a small quiz each week that you'll be required to do, and there will be some problems that you're required to do. The way I've got the grading set up is that everything that you did prior to spring break counts for about half of the course, and everything you do after spring break is going to be the other half of the course. So each week you're going to have a short quiz. Each week you're going to have some problems you have to do. And then during finals week, you will have a final, which will cover the things we go over in the last half of the semester. So the final will go from midterm till the end. So each Monday at 8 a.m., I will post a module, which will be a week's worth of work. It'll go up at 8 a.m. on Monday, and it'll be due the following Monday by 8 a.m. Since I don't know how everyone is set as far as equipment goes, or with computing ability, computer ability, or as far as employment or anything, I'm going to make this class asynchronous, meaning that you don't have to log in during the class time on Friday mornings. Now, with that said, every Friday morning at our designated class time, I'm going to have a D2L chat or maybe a Zoom meeting, but I think I'm leaning towards D2L chat. Whatever's appropriate, where I can interact with you, I can answer questions, I can clarify things, I can work with you on problems. Okay, so every Friday morning at our regular class time, I'll be on D2L to interact with you. This upcoming Friday, the first Friday of the week, that's how it'll be. I'll be there on D2L during our class time, and any questions you have, I'll be glad to answer. So let's get started. So today's topic is we're going to start talking about food and beverage pricing, which is chapter 6. We'll talk about a number of ideas. We'll talk about how the format of the menu can affect your pricing decisions, some other factors that will affect menu pricing, how we decide how to price things, and then some special situations when setting prices. So, first thing we have to keep in mind is what type of menu are we talking about? So, is it a standard menu, which would be what we think of in most restaurants, where the menu doesn't change from day to day, the same things on there every day, you go through and you price things accordingly. This is kind of your standard restaurant menu. It could be a daily menu where I have a menu that changes every day. I get up in the morning, I go to the market, I see what products are fresh and available, and I create a menu to reflect that. Or it can be a cyclical menu, especially if I'm working in a resort or a hospital or a school where I have customers who are going to be there repeatedly. I want to have I want a wide variety of things available, and so the menu will change. And how you price it and how you set your prices will kind of depend on this. And we'll get into that in a minute. So let's see. The daily menu can be different because one of the things that why you use a daily menu is you're able to buy things that are in season. Well, when things are in season, you can also buy things, when they're at their peak and when they're most commonly available, which makes them the most affordable. So the daily menu has that opportunity for you to have the lower food costs, because you can buy the thing that is most affordable at that time. The difficulty is, unlike say a daily menu, unlike say a standard menu, is that you're having to constantly recalculate prices because it's new every day depending on what you've managed to purchase. So, things that affect menu pricing. First we'll just start off with formula for revenue. So the revenue is the price times the number sold, and this is really simple. The amount of revenue we take in a restaurant is how much we charge for something times how many we sell. If I have one item on my menu, I only sell hamburgers and I sell them for $5 a piece. So that would be the price, the number sold. Say I sell 1,000 hamburgers a day. Price is $5 each. Number of hamburgers sold is 1,000. The total revenue, $5,000. So bear with me here. First time using this tool. So 5 times 1,000 equals $5,000. And that's your total revenue. Huh. Hamburgers $5 each. 1,000 hamburgers sold, $5,000 in revenue. General rule of thumb, the more you charge for something, the fewer of them you are going to sell. If I have a hamburger at $5, I'll sell a certain number. If I mark it down to $4, I'll probably sell more. If I mark it up to $6, I'll probably sell less. So some things that can affect the price on the menu. Local competition. Even no matter what food cost I want to run, if my competitor next door or across the street offers his product at a lower price and has similar, it's a similar product, that will affect me. So I have, if, I operate in an environment where I'm selling pizza and there are a lot of pizza restaurants, if everyone, the going price for a pizza is $15, I'm probably going to have to stay pretty much in that area. The service level. If I have a sit-down restaurant with servers, I can charge more. If it is, you come up to the counter and you get your food in a basket with wax paper underneath it, the price point will probably be less. Your guest type. And so this plays out in price sensitivity. Think about when you travel in an airport, the food tends to be expensive. Why is that? Well, because travelers often have expense accounts and they're not paying for the food themselves. Their company is. And as such, they're not really sensitive to the price. They, if a hamburger is $15, well, that's fine. The company is going to reimburse them. So the type of guest you have will affect how you price things. On the other hand, if you are trying to appeal to college students, they're going to be very price sensitive in most cases. And such, a a 5 cent or a 10 cent or a 20 cent difference in an item could be a deciding factor. Product quality. For instance, if I make something from scratch, it is probably going to cost more than if I buy something that's pre-made. So quality will affect pricing decisions. Portion size. If it's bigger, it's going to cost more. Ambiance. If I have a nice restaurant that has candle lights, and white tablecloths and servers in tuxedos, it's probably going to cost more. The meal period. We pay more for dinner than we do for breakfast. And that's just kind of the way it is. Location. If I'm in an expensive part of town or in an expensive area, the meal is going to be more. And then the last thing is the sales mix. The combination of things I'm selling together can affect how I price things. So if I'm selling things a la carte, that is, they're priced individually, there'll be one price. But if you have, say, an entree and it comes with a salad and a drink, then you price it differently. So that those things all affect your pricing. So the sales mix refers to the items that are selected by the guest. Do your guests ordinarily order a drink with their dinner? If so, that will affect your price. You can affect how you price things. Do they commonly get desserts? Do they order entrees? Some restaurants price things a la carte, where every item is priced separately. Um, uh, how your customers purchase things, how they group them, will affect how you price them. Price blending is this idea that I take products that may have really different product cost percentages, and I kind of price them in groups or price them together. Think about when you go into a restaurant and they have an appetizer. So on the menu, and the appetizer may be bruschetta and shrimp cocktail, let's say, for instance. And the bruschetta will be $6 and the shrimp cocktail will be $7. Well, I can tell you the bruschetta, they've got less than $1 worth of material in there because bread is cheap. Whereas the shrimp cocktail, they have $3.50 in that item. So the food cost percentage on them are wildly different. Yet they've kind of priced them similarly because they're similar types of items. So now we'll talk about how we decide how much to charge for something. Will you talk about using a cost percentage or a pricing factor and the contribution margin method? There is no method that is better than the other. It just kind of depends on your situation. So I'll teach you both methods, and then when you're out there in the world, you'll decide how you want to price things. So first thing we have to know is the food cost. So the food cost percentage is pretty easy. We take the cost of all the food that's sold and divide it by the sales. So for instance, if I sell, the total cost of food that's sold is $200. And I sell $1,000 worth of food total. Then my food cost percentage, 20%. Pretty straightforward. So again, I bought $200 worth of material, $200 worth of food. I sold I took in $1,000 in revenue. So I made $1,000 off of that $200 worth of food, which means my food cost was 20%. Now that is for the whole menu, but I can also break it down for an individual item. So let's say that on my menu I have a shrimp cocktail, and that for the shrimp cocktail, I calculate it out, and that I have $50 worth of material to make the shrimp cocktails, and at the end of the night I added up and I sold $100 worth of shrimp cocktails. In this case, the food cost for that single item is going to be 50%. And I don't have a lot of room here for writing, so bear with me. So it's 50%. So again, the cost of a specific food item divided by the sales from that item. So running a food cost or a product cost percentage as far as figuring out what I want to charge for something. We want to decide, what's a reasonable food cost? How much should I make off of an item? Rule of thumb in a restaurant is usually we run around 30%. But I mean, there's so much variation in that. Some very successful places run closer to 50%. Some very successful places run closer to 10%. But 30% is just kind of a rule of thumb about where you're going to be, like where you want to think about. So if I have the cost of a given item, so let's say that the item, whatever I'm selling, let's say that the item I'm selling cost me $1. So the item cost me $1. Now, what food cost percentage do I want to run for that item? Well, maybe for that particular item, I want to run 10%. Let's just, I want to run 10% for that item. So we have 10%. There's the percentage. And the food cost is $1. So if I divide the cost of that item by my food cost percentage, put that little decimal in there so you can see it, I come up with 10. So $1 divided by 10% equals 10. So the sale price for that item would be $10. So the cost of the food item, how much it cost me to make it, divided by the percentage I want to make, will give me the food price that I should charge for it if I want to make that amount. So the pricing factor is a way that I can easily come up with how to price things at my product cost that I want. So like I just showed you on the previous slide how we calculate what that the percentage is. Once I kind of know what percentages I want to charge on something, to come up with a pricing factor, I just take 1 and I divide it by the percentage that I want, and it will give me a pricing factor. So for instance, let's say that I want, we've got 1, and my desired product cost is 33 and a third percent. And that means the pricing factor, if we divide 1 by 33%, ends up being approximately 3, which means that what I do is I take this 3 and I multiply it times the cost of an item, it'll tell me what to charge. So if my desired product cost is 33 and a third percent, then my pricing factor would be 3. So I can take the pricing factor of 3, and let's say that when I buy an item, let's say I'm buying shrimp, and it cost me $2 to buy a portion of shrimp. Let's say I'm going to serve an ounce, and it cost me $2. And that means in order to run a 33 and a third percent food cost, I have to charge $6. Oh, okay. Just to make it a little more, create a little space there. So that's one method where we use the percentage to decide how much we're going to charge for something. But that isn't, the only way to do it. Sometimes we want to do what's called a contribution margin, which is a different way of looking at it. So I used to work at CULN at one of the clubs, and we ran lobsters as specials. Now, for most of the items on the menu, we ran around that 33% food cost. So if something cost $5, we would charge $15 for it on the menu. And most of our entrees came in that $25, $27 price range at the time. But the chef thought that he could make money by running Maine lobsters as a special at one point. So the problem with the Maine lobsters, not necessarily a problem, but the expense that went with them. The lobsters at the time were costing us about $22 each. So if we were going to run the same food cost percentage, we'd have to charge $66 for that item. No one's going to pay that when everything else on the menu is coming around $25. So instead of doing that, we had some $27, $28 items. The $22 lobster at cost, we priced it at $44. Now that's a 50% food cost. That's a really high food cost. But from a contribution margin point of view, we made $22 off of each lobster. Now let's say that I have a chicken dish and the cost on it is $5 and I sell it for $15. Well, that's great. That's a 33% food, 33 and a third percent food cost, and I make $10. Now, same amount of labor, I can run a 50% food cost on lobster. It costs me $22. I sell it for $44. My food cost is 50%, so that's a much worse food cost. But I make $22 off of each one I sell. I make more than twice as much money off of every item I sell. So which is better? Would you rather make $10 a plate or $22 a plate? So that's why you can't just rely on the percentage method or the contribution method, because depending on what your situation is, either one could be appropriate. So with the contribution method, I have the selling price. So like I told you in the previous instance, my selling price was $44. My product cost was $22. And so my contribution margin was $22. And so sometimes when we price menus, what we'll say is, well, I just want to make $4 off of every item. So you calculate the product cost, how much does it make to make something, and then you add that contribution margin to it. I'm just going to make $4 off of every item. That's a very simplified approach, but whether you want to do percentages and pricing factors or you want to do contribution margins, it just kind of depends on the situation. So like I said, in the previous one, we have the product cost. Let's say that I've decided that my contribution margin for every item every item on the menu that I sell is going to make me $3. And if that item costs me $2 to make, that means that my selling price should be $5. And if my product cost for that item is $4, then my selling price should be $7. So whatever it is, however you price it, the goal here, that what you're trying to do is achieve a good price value relationship so that the customer thinks that they're getting a good deal. The other goal is, of course, that you have to make enough to make a profit so that you can operate. So some special pricing situations, things that will affect the way we calculate prices. Well, one thing, coupons. The whole idea of coupons is that I'm going to reduce the amount that I make on any one item. I'm going to make less money from this one I sell with the goal, the hope that I'm going to sell more. So yeah, I'm selling this item and I'm making a nickel less off of it, but I'm going to sell 100 more of these items. So in the long run, I'll make more money. So that's the goal of a coupon, is to you make less on each item, but hopefully increase total revenue by increasing the total number of guests. So keep that in mind if you ever decide to do some sort of price promotion like buy one, get one free, or use of a coupon, is that your goal ultimately is to generate enough additional business that you make more revenue. You have to balance that out, because if I reduce my profit on each item and I end up working twice as hard, 3 times as hard to make the same amount of money or only a tiny amount more, is that a good use of resources? Another pricing situation is we could do value pricing. And this is something that Taco Bell used to do more, which is that we lower the price on all the menu items. And the idea is the same. If we lower the price on all the menu items, we will get more customers so that the total revenue will increase. Bundling is very common. Think of this in terms of value meals, where you get a drink, you get perhaps fries and a sandwich. That if they're grouped together, the restaurant makes more money by getting you to buy all of those together than if you just bought, say, the sandwich. Because typically the most expensive thing in a fast food restaurant is the protein that goes on the sandwich. The drinks are incredibly cheap. The fries are incredibly cheap. So if I can get you to spend more to buy those items that don't cost me very much to make, I still make more profit. Um, Now, another situation that can be a little bit of a challenge is, what if you have a buffet or a salad bar? How do I control prices on that? How do I set my menu price on that? Because sometimes, you got the big fat giant guy who goes in there and eats a lot, or you got the little skinny guy who goes in there and just eats a little bit. How do I decide what's a fair price? One of the things you want to do is, when you have a salad bar or a buffet where people can serve themselves, is that you want to use your inventory method, the ABC method, and want to make sure that most of the items on the menu, or most items on the buffet, are the cheap items, the C items, that where the food cost is very, very low. That you have about 30% of the B items, items you pay a little bit of attention to. Only about 20% of the items on the buffet should be the expensive items like protein. Um, and you also want to arrange the buffet so that the cheap items are first. That's why bread and salad is always at the beginning of a buffet line, is we want people to fill up their plate with those items, so when they get to the sliced meat at the end, there's not as much room, or they're less likely to take very much of it. And that's a way to control the price. So that's how we control the price, but how do we calculate how much we should charge? Really what you have to do is, the first time you run it, it's going to be the chef's best guess as to an appropriate price. But after that, you can kind of use historic data and calculate what you should be charging. So what you need to know is how many people you serve, and how much it costs for you, how much material you put out, how much did you spend to put that food out. So what you want to do is take the cost. So let's say that I have a Sunday buffet and I put out $500 worth of food on that buffet, and I serve 100 people. $500 worth of food, 100 people. Equals, that's interesting, $5 per person. So my buffet cost me $5 per person. Now I have to decide what should I charge. Once I know how much it costs, then I can start thinking about how much I should charge for it. If I want to do a contribution margin of where I sit there and say, well, I want to make $10 off of each person, then I should charge $15 for a buffet, $5 for my cost, $10 for the contribution margin. If I want to do it as a cost percentage, then I multiply the food cost times my pricing factor. Other pricing situation that's a little unusual is wine. Um, you want to price your wine on your not on your buffet. Don't put wine on the buffet. You want to price your wine so that the guest thinks they're getting a good value. So what we there's a lot of variability in the price of wine. So we try and reduce the spread of the price. So that means that our inexpensive wines get marked up a little bit so that the percentage is higher, and our really expensive wines, the percentage tends to be lower, so that the price in the end ends up being closer together. For instance, I mean, it's very easy to have wine that's $10 a bottle and wine that's $100 a bottle, but it's going to be hard to sell that $100 bottle of wine as far as, and when I say a $10 bottle, $100 bottle, I'm talking about what you're paying. It's going to be hard to sell that $100 bottle of wine for 10 times as much as the $10 bottle. So what we tend to do is, the $10 bottle is going to get marked up to $35, for instance, and we'll make $25 off of it. And then the $100 bottle is going to get marked up to $150, for instance, and we'll make $50 off of that bottle. But the cost percentage is wildly different. So, just wine, wine is complicated. We'll just put it that way. Beverages at receptions and parties. Oh, this is always really hard to calculate because open bars, how is someone going to behave with an open bar? It depends on the type of customer you have. It depends on the situation, the time of day. All of these kind of play into it. What you want to do is you want to look through your sales history. You want to go back and see, how much has traditionally has a bachelor party consumed, or a bachelorette party, or a wedding. And then you can, once you see it, how much people consume, then you can start calculating, well, then I need to have these many bottles. I need to charge this amount for it. Whatever you're going to do, you can go back and estimate your product cost, because you can look at what people historically have consumed. So you can look at your product cost, and then you decide what your contribution margin should be. And with those two factors in there, you can start coming up with, well, this would be a reasonable amount to charge for it. For a bachelorette party, historically, what I've seen is that the women consume about $10 worth of champagne each. And I want to make some money off of them, plus I have to account for the fact that some of them may drink a lot. So my contribution margin is going to be $20 for each person, which means that I'm going to price this event out, the bachelorette party, at $30 a head for an open bar for champagne, for instance. Okay, so that is it for pricing. So I will talk to you guys on Friday when we do the D2L chat at class time. Be sure and complete the questions and the problems. And I look forward to working with all of you, and I hope everybody's doing well.